In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. At the beginning of the 9 a.m. service, when I introduced the hymn, I gave the wrong hymn number. Of course, people noticed right away, and I simply said I wanted to ensure that y'all were paying attention. But clearly I had made a mistake, and they all handed me their glasses. But perhaps that mistake was serendipitous, because it coincides, I believe, with the message today. Do you hold people's mistakes against them? How do you get over your mistakes? How do you repair broken relationships? For example, whenever you are upset with your partner or children, are you the one to initiate reconciliation? Are you the first to make up? How do you cope with failure? Are you a forgiving person? Is what I'm really asking. See, these were questions that swirled around in my thought processes as I read the gospel today. A gospel in which we hear Jesus putting the disciples at ease and barbecuing breakfast. I wonder who among us this morning needs to be put at ease. Who needs to be put at ease about a past mistake, or who is experiencing a difficult situation in life and needs Jesus to appear to put you at ease. The scene of the gospel is the lakeshore of Galilee, and I'm told it's beautiful. Perhaps Diane can verify that, having been to Israel, and I hope to go someday. So get your checkbooks ready. Anyway. The setting is by the lake shore. But there's also another charcoal fire. And around this charcoal fire, Jesus asked Peter to acknowledge him. Peter, do you love me? You would remember well at the previous charcoal fire that Peter had adamantly denied Jesus 3 times. See, Peter had been a driving force in the cadre of disciples that Jesus had gathered together. He was a leader, the great enthusiast, the impetuous disciples at times, ready to die for Christ, so much so that he had chopped off the soldier's ear, because that was the depth of his loyalty to Christ. But as we all know, in spite of this great loyalty and commitment he had, Peter failed badly. He failed publicly and disastrously. I do not know the man he swore 3 times when Christ needed him most. Peter had let Christ down. And now he meets Jesus again. Isn't it funny that sometimes the very bridges we burn are the bridges we need to cross someday? My grandmother always used to say, be careful of the bridges that you burn, because you never know who you will need in life. And so as Peter meets Jesus again, something happens that is miraculous and wonderful and heartwarming for all of us. When they could not catch any fish, a voice spoke and said, cast the net to the right side. And immediately that disciple whom Jesus loved recognized who it was, and he said, it is the Lord. And so when Peter heard this, Peter jumped into the water. And as I read it, he was ashamed. He could not face the Jesus whom he had let down. You see, Peter demonstrates the Adam and the Jonah in all of us. That when we are confronted by our mistakes, that when we fail in life sometimes, we want to run, we want to hide. You know, the adage says, you could run, but you cannot hide. Our mistakes do catch up with us. And that's a hard truth to digest. But even though they do catch up with us, here's the wonderful news about the gospel reading today. God forgives. So when Saul traveled the road to Damascus and he was blinded, God used Ananias to anoint him, and the scale fell from his eyes, and he was able to see again. And no longer was he called Saul, but he became Paul. Even this murderer of the Christian church, God forgave and changed his life. I wonder, what does that do for your conscience this morning? When you make a mistake, when you sometimes fail, when others fail us. And so eventually, Peter joins the other disciples on the shore after trying to run, and Jesus confronts him. Will Jesus stop loving me? Will Jesus turn away from me? Will Jesus reinstate me, or will he replace me? What will he do to me? What will he say to me? Perhaps these are all questions in Peter's mind. But even as these questions may have been there, Jesus surprises him. He did none of the above. Instead, he invited Peter and the other disciples to fellowship and have breakfast. And so symbolic as John is, we get the message. It's communion with Jesus all over again. See, on that first occasion, the night before he was betrayed, he was about to die. But now he was risen from the grave. And as he was when he was about to be betrayed, so he is now. And he's letting us know that even when we betray him, even when we deny him, even when we hurt him, even when we make mistakes, that he is still the Lord of love. The Lord who knows and understands and cares and acts. The Lord who gets human weakness and who says with breathtaking tenderness and compassion, come and have breakfast with me. And he gets the grill going. What a marvelous scene. The ultimate I wish I had been there moment. Because this is what we know. That Jesus was not only restoring Peter to the fold, but he was letting him and centuries of disciples later know that this invitation is an invitation to the great feast that one day we will find and encounter once we are forgiven on the seashores of heaven, where we will meet Jesus in the morning light. Come and have breakfast with me. See, that's the invitation he constantly gives throughout the Bible. Come down, Zacchaeus. I want to stay at your house tonight. Come, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. Come, says Jesus. And we hear the cry, even in our brokenness, and our hearts melt. See, an invitation to a meal had great significance then. It implied a desire for fellowship, relationship, and intimacy. When you can invite someone to dine with you and to sit at the dinner table with you, it is a special thing. It implies great intimacy and fellowship. Jesus was issuing an invitation to restore fellowship and to restore the brokenness that had occurred. Yes. The point here is that the resurrected Christ is about restoration. And so while eating breakfast with the disciples, there is a profound encounter of healing and forgiveness. Of all the wonderful themes that emerge from this passage that we can talk about, whether it was the Lord of power and reminds us of God's power, whether it was the Lord who commissions us and reminds us that he can use us even in our brokenness and recommission us to do the work of God, the one that stood out for me in this time and day is that of the healing and forgiveness. Jesus heals the paralyzed memory of Peter. He forgives the past mistakes. God forgives. 3 times the denial is matched by the threefold opportunity to declare real love. Do you love me? And then it is matched by a threefold recommissioning. Tend my sheep. Feed my lamb. he recommissions Peter to get back to his calling. What is this about? Ultimately, it is a great reminder to Peter and to all of us that he is not a mistake. He simply made a mistake. So often, we can allow people's mistakes and misgivings to define them. Whenever you fail, there's a wonderful prayer in our prayer book that says, failure is not a measure of our worth, but an opportunity for a new start. The reason I love this so much is that great failure makes a great follower, because in between there is great love and great forgiveness. To whom much is given, much is expected. Jesus reminds Peter that he is not his mistake. He simply made a mistake. This Jesus makes breakfast and fellowship with failures. And I don't know about you, but this is an immense reassurance to me. We are loved failures. Loved failures. See, like the disciples who caught nothing that night, we all come up short in life. Where do you fall short sometimes? What mistakes in life make you, like Peter, want to dive overboard? We all make mistakes. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, says Paul. And sometimes these mistakes can make us feel empty, as if we are nothing. So often we allow these mistakes to paralyze us and to keep us hidden. But Jesus comes to forgive that past and to help us let go of the guilt so that we can get on with life. And as the psalmist says, weeping may endure it for the night, but joy, or should I say Jesus, comes in the morning light. He comes with a message of love and forgiveness. And so for all of us wondering if God will ever forgive me, of all of us wondering if reconciliation is even possible, may we never forget this beautiful scene at the beach. When you find yourself toiling all night over past failures, remember this picture of Jesus showing up on seashore. Here is an image of Jesus declaring not only his lordship, but his power to pull us out of the miry clay, declaring forgiveness and love. Here is an image of Jesus loving and forgiving Peter to the end, pulling him through a barren moment in his life, pulling him through his mistakes, pulling him through his shame, and saying, I love you. God knows how to pull us through some tough times. He knows how to pull us through some challenging times. And when we think life is down to nothing, God is always up to something. My cup runneth over, says the psalmist. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever and ever. Fill my cup, O Lord. Fill it up and make me whole again. That's what Jesus did for Peter, and that's what Jesus can do for you and for me. He knows how to forgive. And he reminds us that we are loved. Blaming yourself, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, Jesus forgives. And as we will sing shortly, more importantly, he calls us to do likewise. So often, we miss that last line in this gospel passage where he says, follow me. And we're going to sing shortly, won't you let me be your servant? Let me be as Christ to you. So I end as I began. Do you hold people's mistakes and past against them? Let's follow Jesus and forgive. See, to say, you know that I love you, Lord, is to continue the work of the risen Lord in this world. And as I shared with the children this morning, let's prove that love. That's what Jesus was saying. Don't give me lip service. If you love me, feed my lamb, tend my sheep, show me that you love me. Right? Let's prove that love we have for God by loving and forgiving others. Do you love me? It is what we love that defines who we are. It is what we love that defines who we are. And so if we love God, then let that define our actions. If you are inclined to withhold forgiveness, to bury people beneath their mistakes, here is Jesus saying to you, cast your net to the right side. Confront people for their wrong? Yes, we should. But not with condemnation. Always a message of forgiveness. Do you love me? Then tend my sheep. Follow me. Let's do and forgive and love as Jesus did.